So, how much has the whole 2020 election and everything that has flowed from it pissed you off?
Oh, I mean, you can't go a day without thinking about what he's done to this country, because he's such a little baby that he's thrown 250 years of democracy out the window by not accepting the results of I mean, it's so crazy. He's such a sociopath. He's so insane. He just couldn't admit to losing. And we know he lost. He knows he lost. And look how he's fooled everybody. He's convinced all these people that he didn't lose. He's such a sick man. He's so sick. Anyway, no, it hasn't impacted me at all.
In 2020, in Curb, you discovered the advantages to wearing a MAGA hat.
All right, 2 seats at the sushi bar. You know what? Actually, I think we'd prefer to sit at a table, please. Huh.
Sad. Very sad. Sad.
In your world here, and because you live in Beverly Hills or Santa Monica or something like that, what would wearing a MAGA hat do?
I'm sure you'd get some very odd looks in Los Angeles if you were walking around with that hat. But yeah, I used it on a show, got me out of a couple of things. I was going to get beat up by a biker. Yeah. Then I put the hat on. And, yeah.
How do you wrap your head around the fact that he could very well be reelected president? I mean, right now, I'd say he's the favorite.
He's it's such an amazing con man. He has such a gift for lying and fooling people and convincing people of something that's a complete lie.
But the point is, millions and millions and millions of Americans, more so than 3 years ago, they buy it.
They buy it. It's a testament to his conning abilities. He's the greatest con man we've ever produced. Yeah.
By 2016, you had developed such a big platform that Hillary Clinton came on your show right during the height of her presidential campaign. Here she is.
What's something that you always carry with you?
Hot sauce.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Are
you getting information right now? Hot sauce. Hot sauce in my bag, Swag?
Hot sauce.
Really?
Yes.
Now listen, I just want you to know, people are going to see this and say, okay, she's pandering to black people again.
Okay. Is it working?
I find that so interesting to watch from 7 years later. Do you think she was pandering to black people there?
No. And the reason I say no is because there was an interview that came out I think 15 or 20 years before where she said the same thing. They asked her, what's one of her favorite things? And she said she keeps Tabasco in her purse or her pocketbook. So, I mean, if you said it 15, 20 years ago and then you're asked,
fair.
Later on and your answer is the same. I think just around that time, that's when Beyonce had I think it was Formation out, and she had said in the song "Hot Sauce in My Bag," Swag.
Right.
So
did you think she understood that reference when you talk about Formation?
I don't know. I mean, Beyonce's a pretty big deal. But ever since Bill Clinton played the saxophone on Arsenio Hall, that's what people believe Democrats are doing. They show up on these, black platforms, hip hop platforms, and they either want to tell you who their favorite rapper is, or quote whatever the hot, song of the time is, and that's what I think people thought she was doing right there.
You ran into a similar issue a couple of years ago when you were interviewing Vice President Harris. Here she is.
Who's the real president of this country? Is it Joe Manchin or Joe Biden, Madam Vice President?
Come on, Charlemagne.
Come
on. It's Joe Biden.
I can't tell sometimes.
No. It's Joe Biden. And don't start talking like a Republican about asking whether or not he's president.
Do you think Joe Manchin is a problem?
It's Joe Biden, and I'm vice president, and my name is Kamala Harris.
She told you.
She did. I'm glad. I mean, that's like one of the few times we've seen her with some life, since she's been in the White House.
Do you think that Democratic politicians take the black vote for granted and get offended when somebody like you Just ask them a question, just challenges them.
Oh, 100%. You know, and anytime you're a person that people think is left-leaning, if you just simply question what the Democratic Party is doing, you either get accused of being a closeted Republican or, you know, attempting to help Donald Trump win elections. When the fact is, I'm just an American citizen who would be asking those questions of anybody who's either, you know, leader of the free world or running to be leader of the free world. Why wouldn't I ask those questions as a taxpaying citizen? I pay a lot of taxes.
So if you believe the polls, Donald Trump is picking up support among black voters, and especially among young black voters. How do you explain that?
Okay. If you have a community, and I can't speak for all black people aren't monolithic, but I'm just telling you based off conversations that I've had and what I see. If you have a community who feels like they've never been spoken to, you know, by the government, ever, like American government has, you know, ignored them, not paid them any attention, and let's just say all of a sudden you start getting checks in the mail one day, the stimulus checks, what they call stimmies in the hood, for $1,200, and this man's name is on them, Donald Trump. For the first time in probably forever, you just simply feel seen. And you can talk to your next door neighbor about actually receiving something from the American government. Another thing, the First Step Act. You know, people see the First Step Act. If you know somebody who
criminal justice reform.
The criminal justice reform.
Yeah.
If you know somebody who actually came home because of the First Step Act, and you have Donald Trump taking credit for that, that's another thing you can point to and say, man, Donald Trump not only let one of my peoples out of jail, he also sent us money. Now, we all know that's not the way government works, and we all, you know, we're not taking civics tests here. We're just basically observing this is the guy taking credit for all of these things happening. And I think, believe it or not, that stuff is having impact.
You have a new documentary coming out called God and Country about the rise of Christian nationalism.
Right.
Let's take a look.
Okay.
Thank you for filling this table with patriots that love you and that love Christ.
Christian nationalists were the primary organizers of the attack on the United States Capitol.
We have to understand how they understand it. And how they understand it is overthrowing this legitimate election is part of their calling as Christians. To see it actually happen, to watch it live, as a Christian, I felt like a 10-pound weight had been dropped into my stomach.
A lot of people throw around the term, but what is Christian nationalism and why are you so worried about it?
It's not Christianity. It's a political movement. They use the term, Christian national, or they use whatever motive they have to get their ends as God is telling us this is what we need to do. But make no mistake, this is not about the teachings of Jesus. This is about a political movement, and they will do anything and even resort to violence to get what they want.
And how big a part did Christian nationalism play in the attack on the Capitol on January 6th?
Quite a bit. Now, we're not saying that every person who attacked the Capitol was a Christian nationalist, but it was the organizing entity that brought that violence. And we go through it, and in the film, you'll see. And the thing that's interesting about it is it's not just dangerous to the country. You can see, attacking the Capitol, overthrowing the government, but it's, according to these very conservative Christian leaders, it's dangerous to Christianity. It is a threat to Christianity in the way they talk about the true teachings of Jesus.
And how big a threat do you think it is to the country?
Well, it's a big threat only because Donald Trump has marshaled it. They have endorsed him as, certainly he doesn't exhibit anything Christian, but they've adopted him, and he is the head of this. And because he has talked openly about an authoritarian government and getting rid of the constraints of government, it can become very dangerous. Just all you have to think about is this. The founding fathers created this wonderful pluralistic society that we have. separation of church and state. The words separation of church and state are not in the Constitution, and the Christian nationalists believe that there is no separation of church and state. They say it's not in the Constitution, and their idea is to have a white Christian nation. That's what they're looking for. And that's the thing that galvanizes all of the activity.
Fire Drill Fridays. You spent 14 weeks in 2019 in D.C. protesting climate change, getting arrested 5 times, and now you are taking these protests to what you call the front lines for greenhouse gases, places like Louisiana and Texas.
Right. The Gulf area, Texas and Louisiana, is ground zero for the climate crisis. The Biden administration has permitted 24 new gas terminals in an area where so many people are ill and dying from cancer and respiratory illnesses and heart disease. People of color, poor people, indigenous people. And now they're putting 24 more terminals in. I mean, it's called Cancer Alley in Louisiana, where all the refineries and petrochemical companies are. It has to stop. It's not sustainable. We can't keep pumping things out of the ground when the scientists are saying we have to cut our fossil fuel emissions in half in 8 years by 2030. I mean, they're hopeful that we can do it, but we have to light fires under our elected officials, which is why I started the Jane Fonda Climate PAC, because we have to get rid of the elected officials that take money from the fossil fuel industry. They're always going to vote in favor of big oil.
So what is the PAC? You're raising money for people who are more conscious of the climate change?
Who are climate champions, who have taken stands against new pipelines or against fracking or against forever chemicals. And they speak out against the fossil fuel industry that's killing us, basically, and killing animals, killing the ocean. And yes, we endorse candidates that are climate.
So did you do this in the midterms in 2020?
Yes, we supported 60 candidates, 42 of them won. And because we're new, and so we're small, we're not the Koch brothers, but so I supported a lot of down ballot candidates, and I traveled to those states, and boy, did I see what a difference we made. We tripled the amount of money that they had been making, and we got the press to come out and encourage volunteers. So I'm just thrilled. I think it's the most important thing I've ever done in my life. So there's the PAC.
Right.
Taking fossil fuels into the electoral space,
right.
And then Fire Drill Fridays as a grassroots thing. My goal there is to speak to people who are concerned about the climate and encourage them to become activists, do something about it.
And on these Fire Drill Fridays, are you prepared to get arrested again?
It depends on where I am. It depends on the situation. It also depends on, is there a lot of COVID there? I don't want to exactly be put into jail with the people who risk having COVID, and are the police going to hit me? I'm too old to be hit. All my joints are replaced. I'm too afraid something will happen.
What do you think, though, you did in D.C., and that sounds to me like you are in some of these protests, what do you think your getting arrested accomplishes?
Attention. It gets attention. That's all. I mean, this is what happened when I was getting arrested in D.C., for example. People were coming from all over the country, and what was so great, and it was exactly what I hoped for, is they were people who had never been to a rally before, much less getting arrested. And they spoke to me afterwards we'd be in the holding pen together so we could talk, and afterwards we would talk, and they'd tell me what a transformative experience it was for them. That's what I want, is for people to understand how joyous it is to be able to put your body on the line for your core values, for your deep values. It's made a difference historically all over the world, including the U.S.
Jane, as I listen to you, and I've been listening to you, as people of my age have for the last 50 or so years, I've heard you talk with equal fervor about civil rights and about the Vietnam War and about relations between men and women and now climate change. How does the flame burn so bright for you? How do you keep this sense of outrage?
How could I not? I don't understand. I just don't understand how you can know what one knows if you decide to study a subject like the climate, was like the war in Vietnam, and now, like the climate crisis, and not be enraged. I have a 3.5-year-old grandson. No, even if we do everything that's right, he may not ever see a sea turtle. He may never be able to scuba dive over a healthy coral reef, which I've done over the Great Barrier Reef and so many other places in the world. There's so many things that I have loved in my life that he may never know. And this just breaks my heart for him, but also for the turtles and the whales. And it wakes me up at night. But because I can get so depressed about it, but because I'm active and working together with other people who feel the same way and are far smarter than I am, it keeps me hopeful. Hope is an action, it's a muscle.
You're also deeply involved in politics, and you were very involved in supporting Barack Obama and supporting Joe Biden. Here is a clip of you speaking at the 2016 Democratic Convention.
When Donald Trump calls us criminals and rapists, he's insulting American families. My father is not a criminal or rapist. In fact, he's a United States veteran.
You are very active in trying to mobilize the Hispanic vote, to get Hispanics to go out and vote. Question, would you ever consider running for political office yourself?
No, and especially in this moment of politics. It's so divisive, and I don't see how there's faith in politicians in this moment. I can see where voter apathy comes in because they, not her, not him, no. And for me, I really strongly believe the most powerful part of democracy is a citizen. We have way more power as a citizen than as a politician. You can do way more things as a citizen than a politician. They're held to a different bar and a different standard, as they should be. And they're failing to uphold that that standard, I think, in this moment.
But let me push back a little bit. I mean, you say that, and a citizen can do a lot, and you've done a lot, but I mean, it's obvious just from this conversation that you're smart, you're thoughtful, you're reflective. I'm not going to become the leader of the Eva Longoria campaign, but aren't you exactly the kind of person, and also representing a particular segment of the population, who we could see in public life?
Well, I think that's the main thing. Is I am an activist and an advocate for many things and many causes, but I don't speak for Latinos. And I think that's what politicians get wrong, is they want to speak for people. I speak for women, I speak for Latino. I don't do any of those things. I encourage the communities to speak up for themselves. And if you see, Latinos are pretty factioned in political ideology. There's a lot of conservative Hispanics. There's a lot of liberal Hispanics. So it's hard to unite the Hispanic vote. It's hard to define what is the Hispanic vote. But I will say, what I do and what I try to encourage politicians to do is not knock on our door every 4 years with a taco truck and try to get our vote. Don't say our vote matters when our lives don't matter. You have to engage in these communities every day, not every 4 years.
I want to pick up on exactly that point and put up some numbers, because these are quite striking. In the 2018 midterms, 69% of Hispanics voted for Democratic candidates for Congress, while 29% voted for Republicans. That's a 40-point margin for the Democrats. But in the last midterms, this past November, the margin had dropped to 60% for Democrats and 39% for Republicans. So it went from a 40-point margin pro-Democrat to 20-point margin. Mm-hmm. Why do you think we are seeing this swing? It's still predominantly Democrat, but seeing this swing among Hispanic voters towards the GOP?
That is an interesting data to look at, because if you see anything that came out of the 2022 midterms was not a choice for the right. I mean, right. we held on to Congress, we held on to the Senate. I mean, yeah, we had losses, but if you saw who was presented to you on the right, people chose not to vote for that. And even Fox News did a beautiful report on the fact that the results were disappointing, right, for the right. But what I think what that says is, our vote is up for grabs. And it depends on the candidates, and it depends on your state. It depends on your county. You know, what happens from state to state and county to county, whether it's women's rights, voter suppression.
But you say the vote is up for grabs, Eva. What is it that the Democrats are missing that some Hispanics are now saying, you know, maybe I've got a place in the Republican Party?
Well, I think the number one issue for all Americans, including Latinos, which Latinos are Americans, is the economy. That's the number one issue. People think our number one issue is immigration or abortion. And it's jobs and economy. And I think, you know, there's a party that speaks better to that. I'm not saying they have a better track record. I'm just saying they have a better marketing plan, I think. Because I think, you know, the Democrats have done they've done some progressive things in when it comes to creating jobs. And if you look at small businesses, which is the creation of most jobs in the United States, Latinos create small businesses 4 times the national average. Latinas specifically 6 times the national average. So who's creating the jobs? Our community. We're creating a lot of jobs and a lot for this country. And so I think they're looking for somebody who has the business solution, the economic solution to their pocketbook, to their, you know, their monthly bills. Who's going to help me?
And so when Republicans talk about lower taxes and less government spending,
appealing.
That's attractive.
I think it's attractive. Yeah. I think, you know, a lot of the talking points for both sides are very deceiving, and I think it is very hard. You know, we did a study as to why there were so many eligible Latinos that didn't vote, and we found it was a confidence gap. They don't feel confident going into a voting booth and voting for the wrong person. They don't know, like, maybe I vote for the wrong person. Maybe I'm voting against my family's interest. I don't know enough. I feel like I have to have a political science degree to go into the voting booth. It takes me hours, Eva, hours to fill out a ballot. You know, imagine that ballot in front of somebody who's never done it before, with all the X's and O's and all the measures and the judges, and, you know, and I research it and I look and I see who's for it and I see who's against it, and then I call my friends, and if my friend's a nurse, I'm like, why is the nurses union against this? She's like, well, this is what they're doing. And I said, but it says that it takes me hours. So imagine everybody having to do that. It's very confusing, and it's set up that way. And I think it's unfair to disenfranchised communities like Hispanics.
And then there's your most recent Broadway appearance as Howard Beale, the anchorman turned mad prophet in Network. And what strikes me is based on a movie that came out in 1976. Its message about politics and media and corporate greed stands up pretty well today, doesn't it?
We thought it did, yeah. So that's why I thought it was maybe prescient of the time that back then it was the occasion to present that, but it's really had a shelf life that is extraordinary. And here we are in the 20s, and it's very apropos now.
And why do you? I mean, in what way do you think? How do you think the message applies to us today?
Well, because it's a show. What I didn't realize when I was a young boy growing up, watching your father, I didn't know that there were decisions made by producers to say, well, let's go with these 4 stories now, and we'll lead with this one, and I just thought it was just presented. And so once you realize, oh, there are human beings behind all these decisions about what to say and what not to say, you realize, oh, it can be altered, it can be biased, it could be anything, and that's what we realize is that it's a business. It's really a business, and it's hard to carve in and find out who is speaking the truth to you. It's really difficult.
And the choices that are made by the people on the air and the people behind the scenes can affect what the audience sees and how they receive it.
Yes, very much so.
And what they end up thinking.
Right. So now we have opinion shows that are masked under the umbrella heading of news, and it's like, well, wait a minute, is that really news, or this is this person's point of view, and it gets muddy, and it crosses over, and it confuses people, and in a way that I think people want it to be confusing.
The people behind the scenes.
Yeah.
You got into a tussle recently with Bill Maher about critical race theory and wokeness. When you look at the political discourse in our country today and the role that media plays in it, what do you think?
It's difficult to try to find truly unbiased reporting, news that really is straight shooters. You know, this conversation I had with Bill, we're talking about critical race theory, and I think it's imperative that it's taught, that we look at our history, much the same, I think, that Germany has looked at their history in involvement in the wars, that they 1 and 2, and embrace it and say, this is where we went wrong, this is how it went wrong, this is why it can't go wrong again. And I think they have done a very commendable job in doing so, but the United States really hasn't. You present it and say, well, 400 years of slavery, yeah, but we're moving on. And it's like, no, let's really discuss it. How did that happen? How did we get to a point where we treated other human beings as slaves? And we're okay with that. When I see the Make America Great Again, my comment is, do you accept that could possibly be construed as a racist remark? And most people, a lot of people go, how could that be racist? Make America great again? I said, so just ask yourself from an African-American experience, when was it ever great in America for the African-American? When was it great? So if you're making it great again, it's not including them. So it's to teach us in the woke world to open up and accept the possibilities that our privilege has created blind spots for us. And maybe I haven't seen what is really happening yet in all my years.
Thanks so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe to CNN's YouTube channel so you never miss the best of my conversations. And you can catch the full interviews of Who's Talking streaming right now on Max.